What if, for 31 years, you were forced to remain silent about your daughter's death? What if every attempt to seek justice was met with threats, lies, and closed doors? This is not a hypothetical question. It is the reality the Hernandez family lived for 3 entire decades. Cancun, 1993. To the outside world, it was the burgeoning paradise of Mexican tourism. White sand beaches, turquoise waters, and dreamlike hotels rising like concrete giants against the Caribbean Sea. But behind that picture-perfect postcard, Cancun was also a lawless land, a place where laws bent under the weight of tourist dollars, where case files could disappear as easily as people. In a small living room in Guadalajara, a shattered family guards the remnants of a life cut short. Photographs that no longer smile, clothes that will never be worn again, and a police file that was technically never closed. Among these objects, a handwritten letter remains unopened, marked with a date that burns, August 16, 1993. The shaky script on the envelope says simply, "For when the time is right." After 31 years of sepulchral silence, that time has finally come. What you are about to hear is not fiction. It is not a conspiracy theory pulled from the internet. It is the direct testimony of a family that refused to forget, that fought against a system designed to bury the truth along with its dead. This is the true story of what really happened to Mariana Hernández Solís in Cancun in that fateful August of 1993. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more cases like this, and activate the notification bell. Let me know in the comments what country you're watching from. Your support makes it possible for us to continue exposing these hidden truths. Mariana Hernández Solís was 23 years old when she boarded Mexicana de Aviación Flight 482 from Guadalajara to Cancun on August 12, 1993. She wasn't just a name in a police file. She was a daughter, a sister, a friend, and she was about to graduate with a degree in psychology from the University of Guadalajara. The trip to Cancun was her early graduation gift to herself, paid for with her own savings from 2 years of working as a waitress in the afternoons. That day, she wore her favorite outfit, a white cotton blouse with floral embroidery she had bought in Tlaquepaque, Levi's jeans her younger brother Roberto had given her for Christmas, and her inseparable red Converse sneakers, worn from years of use but which she refused to replace because, as she said, they already had their own personality. On her left wrist, a silver bracelet with butterfly charms gleamed, an heirloom from her maternal grandmother who had passed away just 6 months earlier. The last call with her family was at 7:23 p.m. on August 14th. Her mother, Carmen Solís, remembers every word. "Mom, I'm going on the Chichén Itzá tour tomorrow. I have everything ready. The hotel is even more beautiful than I expected, and the people are so kind. I brought you a gift, but it's a surprise." The final photograph taken in the lobby of the Palmas Doradas hotel shows her smiling next to a huge planter with a bird of paradise flower. Her brown hair is pulled back in a high ponytail, and she's wearing the Ray-Ban sunglasses she had saved up to buy specifically for this trip. In her room, number 247, left perfectly tidy according to the cleaning staff's report, was the navy blue dress with white polka dots she planned to wear that night for dinner at the hotel restaurant. 31 years later, that dress still hangs in Carmen's closet, wrapped in plastic, waiting for its owner. "I can't get rid of it," Carmen says, holding back tears. "It's as if by keeping it, a part of me is still waiting for her to come back and put it on." Among her belongings, they also found her travel journal, a hardcover notebook with sunflowers on the cover that she had started on the first day. The last words written in her clear, rounded handwriting read, "Tomorrow will be a great day. I can feel it." Next to the journal, a ticket for the Chichén Itzá tour scheduled for August 15th at 8 a.m. was completely intact, never used. Ticket number 08847, paid for in cash and stamped by the Palmas Doradas Hotel, would become one of the many pieces of evidence the family would obsessively guard for the next 3 decades. Roberto, who was just 15 when his sister disappeared, still has the last gift she gave him before she left, a keychain shaped like a guitar that she found at the airport. She gave it to me and said that when I became famous with my band, I had to remember my first fan, recalls Roberto, now 46, who never played the guitar again after that night. August 15th, 1993. A Sunday. The weather forecast reported 31 degrees Celsius, clear skies, and the typical humidity of the Mexican Caribbean. A perfect day for tourism. A cursed day for the Hernandez family. 7:15 a.m. Mariana is last seen in the hotel dining room by a waitress, Patricia Monsiváis, who would later testify that the young woman seemed excited, eating huevos rancheros and drinking orange juice while looking at a tourist brochure. She asked me about the best places to buy handicrafts, Patricia would recall in her statement, a statement ignored by the authorities. 8:30 a.m. The tour to Chichén Itzá departs without Mariana. The tour guide, Joaquin Perez, marks her as absent on his list. Strangely, no one from the hotel tries to contact her to see if she had changed her plans. This detail would become crucial years later. 10:45 a.m. A security camera at the Plaza Caracol shopping center 3 kilometers from the hotel captures a blurry but identifiable image of Mariana entering a souvenir shop. The video, which the police would take 2 weeks to request, shows she was alone, wearing denim shorts and a pink t-shirt with a picture of Frida Kahlo. 12:30 p.m. She returns to the hotel. A bellboy, Eduardo Ramirez, sees her go up to her room. She seemed tired but happy. She was carrying several shopping bags, Eduardo would state, though his testimony would be dismissed as irrelevant in the official report. 2:00 p.m. to 6:00 p.m. An absolute void. No one reports seeing her during these 4 crucial hours. The initial theory suggested she was resting in her room, but the electronic key log, mysteriously damaged according to the hotel, could neither confirm nor deny this. 6:15 p.m. Maria Esther Gonzalez, a guest in room 249, hears raised voices coming from the hallway. It was definitely an argument, a young woman's voice and a deeper man's voice, but in hotels you don't get involved, she would testify weeks later, when it was already too late. 7:00 p.m. Mariana calls the front desk from her room to confirm her 9:00 p.m. dinner reservation at the hotel restaurant. The receptionist on duty, Linda Castillo, notes the confirmation. It would be the last time anyone would hear her voice with certainty. 8:30 p.m. The lobby cameras, the only ones conveniently working that night, show Mariana exiting the elevator. She is wearing the outfit her mother had helped her choose. Black dress pants, a white silk blouse, and low-heeled shoes. She walks towards the hotel's main exit. 8:47 p.m. Antonio Vargas, a taxi driver based outside the hotel, swears he saw Mariana speaking with a tall, heavy-set man near the taxi stand. She looked uncomfortable. She kept stepping back, Antonio would declare. The police never formally interviewed him. 9:10 p.m. Estimated time of disappearance. Mariana never arrives for her dinner reservation. Table 14, with its view of the sea, remains empty all night. 10:30 p.m. Following protocol, the restaurant staff calls room 247. There is no answer. 11:45 p.m. Rosa Maria Delgado, a tourist from Monterrey, finds a single low-heeled sandal abandoned in the alley between the hotel and the adjacent shopping plaza. The size 24 black Andrea brand sandal was an exact match to the description of Mariana's footwear. Rosa Maria hands it in at the reception desk where, inexplicably, it is lost before the police arrive. 12:30 a.m. The night security guard Raul Mendez makes his routine patrol. His report, which was carefully altered later, originally mentioned suspicious stains in the B2 parking area. That page of the report would disappear from the official file. August 16th, 6 o'clock a.m. The maid finds room 247 empty, the bed unmade, the lights on. On the desk sits the disposable Kodak camera Mariana had bought for the trip. When it was finally developed weeks later at the family's insistence, the film was completely exposed. However, a later analysis would determine that the roll had been deliberately exposed to light, not by accident. The official timeline ends here, but the gaps, the inconsistencies, the ignored testimonies, they all painted a very different picture from the one the authorities wanted to show. Every unexplained minute was an open wound for the family. Every discarded testimony a slap in the face to Mariana's memory. The official report from the Quintana Roo State Attorney General's office, dated August 18, 1993, is a monument to incompetence, or, more likely, institutionalized corruption. In just 2 pages, the document concludes with a chilling bureaucratic coldness. No signs of a crime are perceived. The citizen Mariana Hernández Solís apparently left the hotel of her own free will, possibly to meet with a romantic interest not reported to her family. This conclusion was reached after a mere 48 hours of investigation, a generous term for what was, in reality, a systematic cover-up. The commander in charge, Jorge Elizondo Marquez, never personally visited the scene. He never interviewed the eyewitnesses. He never requested the security videos from surrounding businesses. The Hernandez family was treated not as victims seeking justice, but as a nuisance interrupting Cancun's tourism machine. Carmen Solis remembers her first visit to the police station. They told me that young girls come to Cancun to have fun, that my daughter had probably met someone and didn't want us to know. They treated me like I was a hysterical, overprotective mother. Local media, notably the newspaper Novedades de Quintana Roo, published articles that practically blamed Mariana for her own disappearance. Young woman from Guadalajara disappears after a night of partying, read one headline on August 20th. This was despite the complete lack of evidence that Mariana had been partying or drinking. 2 crucial witnesses were systematically ignored. Besides Antonio Vargas, the taxi driver, there was Lucia Fernandez, a tourist from Mexico City who was smoking on her balcony around 8:45 p.m. Lucia clearly saw a young woman matching Mariana's description struggling with a burly man in the taxi area. She was trying to pull away, that was obvious. The man was holding her by the arm. I thought about calling security, but then I lost sight of them, Lucia stated in a letter sent to the family weeks later, after she learned about the case on the national news. When the Hernandez family tried to get the police to formally interview Lucia, they were told her testimony was unreliable because she had admitted to having 2 glasses of wine with dinner. The fact that this was 3 hours before the sighting apparently invalidated her entire account, according to the authorities. Access to the hotel's security recordings was repeatedly denied. First, they said the cameras were under maintenance. Then they claimed the tapes were recycled every 24 hours and had already been recorded over. Finally, when a judge ordered the release of any available material, the hotel reported a minor fire in the security room that had destroyed all the recording equipment. The first and only suspect formally detained was Carlos Mendoza, a street vendor selling handicrafts who had been seen talking to Mariana on the 14th. Carlos was released after 48 hours without a documented formal interrogation. The release form, signed by Commander Elizondo himself, stated curtly, "Insufficient evidence to proceed." Carlos disappeared from Cancun that same night and was never located again. The most revealing part of the failed investigation was what wasn't done. No formal search of the hotel's surroundings was ever conducted. No records from other hotels were checked to see if Mariana had tried to change her lodging. No flight manifests or bus arrivals were verified. The Nichupte Lagoon, less than a kilometer from the hotel, was never dredged. The official case file, a copy of which the family obtained after countless legal battles, had pages that were clearly torn out. The folio numbers jumped from 14 to 19, from 23 to 27. When they confronted the authorities about these irregularities, the response was that it had been a numbering error. In September 1993, the family hired a private investigator, Ernesto Gutierrez, a former agent of the Mexican FBI. Gutierrez lasted exactly 1 week on the case. They told me in no uncertain terms to stop digging, or my family would suffer the consequences, he would confess years later to Roberto Hernandez. There were some very powerful people involved in Cancun. That's all I could find out before I had to flee the state. What do you think really happened that night in Cancun? Was it a cover-up from the very beginning? Leave me your theory in the comments while I show you what the family discovered on their own. Hit the like button if this story is impacting you. And remember, what comes next will change everything you thought you knew about this case. The years following Mariana's disappearance were a prolonged torture for the Hernandez family. It wasn't just the pain of loss, but the agony of not knowing, multiplied by the frustration of facing a wall of institutional silence, veiled threats, and doors that slammed shut one after another. Carmen Solís became a familiar figure in the government offices of Quintana Roo and Mexico City. Every 6 months, religiously, she would travel to demand progress in the investigation. She carried a binder that grew thicker with each visit. New letters, new clues she had gathered herself, names of potential witnesses. The officials would receive her with the same empty courtesy and the same hollow promises. In 1996, the family received their first direct threat. An envelope with no return address appeared under the door of their home in Guadalajara. Inside, a single sheet of paper with a message typed on a computer. The dead should be left to rest. Families who do not understand this may find themselves among them. Carmen took this information to the local police. The case was filed away, dismissed as unsolicited correspondence. 1998 marked a dark turning point. Roberto, then 20 years old, had started his own investigation. Using the nascent internet, he had connected with other families reporting similar disappearances in the Cancun area during the 90s. He had identified a pattern: young women traveling alone or in small groups, vanished without a trace, cases closed far too quickly. One November night, Roberto was intercepted leaving an internet cafe. 2 men forced him into a van. What happened over the next 3 hours would mark him for life. They told me the exact number of steps from my house to the university. They knew the names of all my friends. They described the route my mother took to the market. Roberto recounts, his voice still trembling 26 years later. The message was clear. They could get to any of us, whenever they wanted. The year 2005 brought a cruel irony. A report on Cancun's tourism boom aired on the evening news. Among those interviewed, celebrating the region's economic success, was Miguel Ángel Rodríguez Torres, presented as a prosperous hotel entrepreneur. Mariana's father, Don Roberto Hernández, recognized him immediately. It was the same man who had been the manager of the Palmas Doradas hotel in 1993. The same man who had insisted that no cameras were working on the night of the disappearance. Don Roberto would not survive to see justice. The massive heart attack that killed him 3 days after seeing that news report was officially attributed to natural causes. He was 58 years old and, according to his cardiologist, had been in perfect cardiovascular health just a month before. Carmen continued alone, but something had shifted. In 2007, during one of her ritual visits to Cancun, she was approached by a woman in an airport restroom. "Ma'am, I can't give you my name, but I worked at the Palmas Doradas back in '93. Your daughter wasn't the only one, there were others, but I can't say more. I've already risked too much just by approaching you." Before Carmen could react, the woman had vanished into the crowd. 2011 was the year of self-imposed silence. Carmen, physically and emotionally exhausted, made the most difficult decision of her life. She packed away all of Mariana's belongings, every document, every piece of evidence, into a storage unit she rented for that specific purpose. "It wasn't giving up," she explains now. "It was waiting for the right moment. I knew that someday something would change. Truths can't stay buried forever." Among the stored items was one particularly painful object, an audio cassette that Mariana had recorded a week before her trip. It was a message for her mother's birthday, which would have been on August 30th. "Mom, by the time you hear this, I'll be back from my trip and I'll have given you your gift, but I wanted you to have something more personal." The recording began. Carmen couldn't bring herself to listen to it in its entirety until 2024. The years passed in a routine of dull pain. 2015, 2018, 2020. Every August was a wound reopened. Roberto had moved to the United States, partly to escape the memories, partly for his own safety. Carmen grew older, carrying her grief with a dignity that was heartbreaking to those who knew her. But beneath that surface of apparent resignation, the family never stopped gathering information. Every news clipping about Cancun was filed away. Every change in the political administration was monitored. Every advance in forensic technology was studied. They were waiting, as Carmen had said, for the right moment. That moment would arrive in the most unexpected way on June 5, 2024. Roberto Hernández had returned to Guadalajara to help his mother with the sale of the family home. Carmen, at 74, had decided to move into a smaller apartment. The house held too many ghosts. Among the pending tasks was emptying the attic, that forgotten space where families traditionally keep what they can't bear to throw away, but no longer want to see. Cardboard boxes marked with dates spanning decades. Photo albums from when photography was analog. Documents from a pre-digital era. Roberto found a metal box, the kind used to store important papers in the 80s. It was rusted at the corners. The lock had given way years ago. Inside, among deeds and birth certificates, was a manila envelope he didn't recognize. It had no external markings, only a rusty staple sealing it shut. "It was as if the envelope burned my hands when I opened it," Roberto recalls. Inside were several documents, but one in particular made him feel as if the floor had vanished from beneath his feet. It was a photocopy of a forensic medical report dated August 17, 1993. The letterhead was official: Quintana Roo Institute of Forensic Sciences. The name at the top was unmistakable: Mariana Hernández Solís. The document was devastating in its clinical clarity. It described injuries consistent with extreme physical violence. Contusions on the wrists indicating restraints, severe cranial trauma, evidence of sexual assault, the cause of death, asphyxiation by strangulation, the estimated time of death between 10 p.m. on August 15th and 2 a.m. on August 16th. But the most shocking part was not the report's content, but its mere existence. Officially, Mariana's body had never been found. There had been no autopsy because there had been no body. Yet here was a detailed forensic report signed by a Dr. Alejandro Ruiz Prado, dated 2 days after her disappearance. Roberto called his mother immediately. Carmen arrived in minutes despite living on the other side of the city. When she saw the document, she did not cry. "I always knew she was dead," she said, her voice filled with the peace of a horrible confirmation. "But now I know that someone else knew too, and they hid it." A search for Dr. Ruiz Prado revealed another macabre twist. He had disappeared in 1995, officially having emigrated to the United States. There were no records of him after that date, no trace in any American medical college. It was as if he had evaporated. How had this document found its way into the family home? Carmen had no memory of ever receiving it. The only possible explanation was that Don Roberto had somehow obtained it before his death and hidden it. Perhaps to protect his family. Perhaps waiting for the right moment that, for him, never came. The document had a barely legible note in the margin, written in blue ballpoint pen. Hotel basement incinerator. 3 words that suggested an unimaginable horror. The Palmas Doradas hotel had an industrial incinerator in the basement, supposedly used for trash. The implication was nauseating. Roberto immediately contacted a journalist friend in Mexico City. He sent copies of the document. Within 48 hours, the news exploded on social media before the traditional media could react or be silenced. Justice for Mariana became a trending topic. After 31 years, the case that Cancún had tried to bury was resurrecting with unstoppable force. The media and social pressure was a tsunami that the Quintana Roo authorities could not ignore. In July 2024, the State Attorney General's office, under a new administration that had come to power promising transparency, announced the official reopening of the Hernández Solís case. The special prosecutor assigned, Patricia Mendoza Ruiz, was known for her integrity and her track record of solving cold cases. Her first action was to request all the original case documents. What she received was revealing: a paltry 15-page file, obviously altered with evidence of torn-out pages and information redacted with correction fluid, a practice impossible to justify in a legal document. Modern technology offered possibilities that didn't exist in 1993. The first breakthrough came from the analysis of the clothes Mariana had left in her hotel room. Despite the time that had passed, advances in DNA analysis allowed for the extraction of viable samples. In addition to Mariana's DNA, traces of male DNA were found on the blouse she had worn on the 14th. The CODIS database initially yielded no matches, but an expanded search in state databases revealed a partial match to one Fernando Salgado Espinosa, who had been arrested for sexual assault in Chiapas in 2001. Salgado had worked as maintenance staff at the Palmas Doradas Hotel in 1993. The investigation revealed that Salgado had abruptly left his job on August 20, 1993. 5 days after Mariana's disappearance. The hotel's human resources records, miraculously preserved in a warehouse, showed that he had received an unusually generous severance package, equivalent to 2 years' salary. The most shocking testimony came from Maria Elena Castañeda, who had worked as a maid at the hotel in 1993. Now 67 and living in Mérida, she finally felt safe enough to speak. "I saw Miss Mariana go into the manager's office, Mr. Rodriguez Torres's office, around 8:30 at night. I never saw her leave. They sent me home early that night, something that had never happened before." Maria Elena revealed more. "The next morning they told us there had been a problem with the pipes in the basement and that it was forbidden to go down there. The smell coming up was horrible, but they told us it was the drainage. It took them 3 days to fix that problem. I never saw a single plumber." An analysis of the hotel's laundry system revealed another chilling detail. A laundry ticket dated August 16, 1993 at 4:47 a.m. recorded a special cleaning for room 512, the management suite of Miguel Ángel Rodríguez Torres. That type of special cleaning was generally reserved for biological incidents, like blood or bodily fluids. The search for Rodríguez Torres led investigators to Vancouver, Canada, where he was living under the name Michael Rivers, running an import-export company. The extradition request was processed with unusual speed, likely due to the international media pressure the case had generated. In September 2024, excavations at the former site of the Palmas Doradas Hotel, which had been demolished in 2008 to build a shopping mall, revealed bone fragments in what had been the basement's incinerator area. Preliminary analysis indicated charred human remains from multiple individuals, impossible to identify due to the degree of destruction. Mariana's diary, analyzed with new handwriting recovery technology, revealed previously illegible entries. 1, dated August 14th, read, "The hotel manager makes me feel uncomfortable. Today he invited me for a drink in his office to discuss a problem with my reservation. I told him we could sort it out at the front desk. He didn't like my answer." The web of complicity extended beyond the hotel. Financial records showed significant transfers from the Palmas Doradas Hotel's accounts to several local police officials in the weeks following Mariana's disappearance. Commander Jorge Elizondo Marquez, who had led the original investigation, had purchased a 3 million peso house in cash in September 1993 on a monthly salary of 15,000 pesos. Each new piece of evidence painted a more horrific picture. Mariana had been the victim of a predator protected by a network of corruption that prioritized tourism and money over human life. October 2024. The interrogation room at the Quintana Roo Attorney General's office had never seen a suspect of such a profile. Miguel Ángel Rodríguez Torres, alias Michael Rivers, now 71, had been extradited from Canada after a legal battle that lasted just 1 month. The charges: aggravated homicide, obstruction of justice, and criminal conspiracy. The first 48 hours of interrogation were an exercise in denial. Rodríguez Torres, advised by a team of high-profile lawyers, maintained his innocence. He didn't remember Mariana Hernández. There were thousands of guests at the hotel. The records could be wrong. Anyone could have used his office. The breaking point came when Prosecutor Mendoza presented evidence that not even the family knew about. A video recovered from a city traffic camera, recently digitized from deteriorated VHS tapes, clearly showed Rodríguez Torres's black Mercedes-Benz leaving the hotel at 2:47 a.m. on August 16, 1993. In the back seat was a shape wrapped in what appeared to be a sheet. Even more devastating was the testimony of Claudia Rodríguez Sanchez. No relation to the accused, who had been a receptionist at the hotel. Claudia had kept a secret for 31 years, terrified of the consequences. Now, with terminal cancer and weeks to live, she decided to speak. "That night, Mr. Rodríguez asked me to delete the keycard access logs. He told me there was a problem with the system, but I saw the screen before I erased everything. Mr. Rodríguez's card had opened room 247, Mariana's room, at 8:52 p.m. I also saw that the basement emergency door had been opened 6 times between midnight and 3 a.m. Claudia continued with blood-chilling details. "The next morning I found the young lady's necklace in the hallway near the manager's office, a small chain with a butterfly charm. I gave it to Mr. Rodríguez. He said he would put it in lost and found, but I saw him slip it into his pocket. He gave me 50,000 pesos that week, said it was a bonus for my discretion. I had never received a bonus before or since." Confronted with this evidence, Rodriguez Torres began to crack, but what he offered was not a confession, but a version that blamed others. According to him, Mariana had died accidentally during a consensual encounter that went wrong. He had panicked and called his contacts to handle the situation. Those contacts turned out to be a broader and more sinister network than imagined. Rodriguez Torres implicated several hotel entrepreneurs in the area, tourism officials, and at least 3 police commanders. According to his version, it wasn't the first time they had handled a situation like this. Cancun in the 90s was the Wild West of Mexican tourism, where the disappearances of tourists were swept under the rug so as not to affect the industry. Do you know how much money Cancun would lose if it got out that tourists were disappearing? Rodriguez Torres said in a moment of cruel honesty. A case like this could have destroyed the industry. We made a business decision. That business decision had included the destruction of Mariana's body in the hotel's industrial incinerator, the purchase of witnesses' silence, the fabrication of a romantic runaway narrative, and the systematic intimidation of a family for 3 decades. Fernando Salgado Espinosa, the maintenance worker whose DNA was found on Mariana's clothing, was tracked down to a prison in Chiapas. He was already serving a life sentence for a series of sexual assaults. His testimony was even more disturbing. He confirmed that he had assisted Rodriguez Torres that night, but added a chilling detail. She wasn't the first, nor would she be the last. The boss, he said, had a particular taste, young, female tourists always traveling alone. I just helped clean up afterwards. The expanded investigation uncovered at least 7 similar cases between 1991 and 1996, all previously dismissed as voluntary disappearances or runaways. All of them young women, all of them tourists, all vanished without a trace from Cancun's hotel zone. In December of 2024, the government of Quintana Roo issued an official public apology to the Hernandez family. The ceremony, broadcast nationwide, was a moment of both catharsis and profound pain. Carmen Solís, supported by Roberto, spoke with a voice that had waited 31 years to finally be heard. My daughter was not a statistic. She was not collateral damage for the sake of tourism. She was a brilliant young woman with dreams and a future, murdered by men who believed they were untouchable. For 31 years, they told us we were crazy, that we were imagining things, that we should leave the past behind. But a mother never forgets, a family never stops seeking justice. Mariana's diary, recovered and restored, revealed one final entry that no one had ever been able to read before. It was written on the afternoon of August 15th, just hours before her death. Mom always says I'm too trusting. Maybe she's right, but I don't want to live in fear. I want to believe that the world is good, that people are good, even if I'm wrong sometimes. The confrontation with the truth did not bring Mariana back. But it did expose the sheer scale of the criminal conspiracy that had operated in Cancun for years. It also laid bare the systemic failures that allowed these crimes to occur and be covered up. The case became a watershed moment for justice in Mexico, inspiring the reopening of dozens of similar cold cases. What you are about to discover is more disturbing than you can imagine. If you think you can handle it, keep watching. And remember to subscribe if you haven't already. This story needs to be told. These victims need to be remembered. February 2025. The trial of Miguel Ángel Rodríguez Torres concluded with a sentence of life in prison, without the possibility of parole. The final charges included aggravated murder, rape, unlawful imprisonment, and destruction of evidence. Fernando Salgado Espinosa received an additional 40 years, on top of his existing sentence. 6 other accomplices received sentences ranging from 15 to 30 years. But for the Hernandez family, legal justice was only part of the closure they needed. In March of 2025, they held a symbolic ceremony on the beach in Cancún, on the very spot where the Palmas Doradas hotel had once stood. Carmen scattered sunflower petals, Mariana's favorite flower, into the Caribbean Sea. "You can rest now, my child," she whispered to the wind. "Everyone knows the truth now." The symbolic exhumation of the recovered bone fragments, though not individually identifiable, allowed for a dignified burial for all the unidentified victims. A commemorative plaque was installed, in memory of those who never returned. Their truth is our fight. Roberto Hernandez published the book, 31 Years of Silence, The Truth About Mariana, with all proceeds going to a foundation to help families of the disappeared. The book became a bestseller, not because of morbid curiosity, but for its meticulous documentation of how an institutional cover-up operates. The case inspired the Mariana Law, passed unanimously by the Mexican Congress, which establishes strict protocols for investigating the disappearances of tourists and severely penalizes official cover-ups. A special cold case unit was also created, equipped with cutting-edge technology and incorruptible personnel. Carmen Solís, now 75, became a powerful voice for the silenced victims. Her testimony before the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights was instrumental in pressuring for reforms in tourism justice systems throughout Latin America. The Palmas Doradas Hotel was never rebuilt. A memorial garden stands in its place. Every August 15th, families from all over the country gather there to remember their missing loved ones, to promise one another that they will never stop searching, never stop demanding the truth. The final page of the official file, signed by Prosecutor Mendoza, concludes, "This case proves that there is no such thing as a perfect crime when there is a family that refuses to forget. Justice may be delayed, but when a mother fights for her daughter, when a brother searches for his sister, when a family remains united in their quest for truth, not even all the power in the world can keep a lie buried forever." Mariana Hernández Solís was 23 years old when she was murdered. Today, she would be 54. She never graduated with her psychology degree. She never married. She never had the children she dreamed of. But her death was not in vain. Her case opened the doors for dozens of families to find answers, for a corrupt system to be exposed, and for Cancún and Mexico to confront the shadows lurking behind their tourist paradise. If you've made it this far, it's because this story has touched you deeply. Subscribe to the channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss the next case. Comment on what story I should investigate next. Do you know of a silenced case in your country? Let me know in the comments. Like this video if you want more stories like this, and share it with someone who appreciates true crime with real investigation. Remember, behind every unsolved case, there is a family that never stopped searching for answers. Behind every cover-up, there are brave people willing to risk everything for the truth. And behind every victim, there is a story that deserves to be told, no matter how many years pass, no matter how powerful those who wish to silence it may be. We'll see you in the next case. Until then, remember, the truth always finds a way to the surface.